Welcome to Decrypt, Asia's first blockchain and cryptocurrency podcast. I'm your host, Tushar. Each week, we take a deep dive into the Asian blockchain scene with investors, technologists, and industry insiders. Go to decrypt.asia to subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Telegram to join in the discussions. Hi, guys. Today, I'm interviewing a very interesting project. Bluzelle is a decentralized database using blockchain technology. Bluzelle allows individuals to rent any spare computer storage space to application developers to earn crypto tokens. Our guest for today's show is Pavel Bains. Before starting Bluzelle, Pavel was the co-founder of StoryPanda, a digital book platform that empowered kids to read, create, and share books. StoryPanda had licensing deals with DreamWorks, Warner Brothers, amongst other companies. Prior to StoryPanda, Pavel was in general manager and CFO roles for video game studios, including Three Wave Software and Disney Interactive Studios. Welcome to the show, Pavel.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
So before we dig into what you guys are doing at Bluzelle, could you tell us about your background, how you got introduced to blockchain, how Bluzelle came about, and your journey from Canada to Singapore?
Yeah, that'd be exciting to do. So my background is actually in digital media and video games. That's what I used to work for. So I used to work for Disney, did projects for Microsoft, Activision, Electronic Arts. I had a children's book publishing platform on the iPad called StoryPanda. And eventually, we finished up StoryPanda, and then I wanted to get into something really hard technology. I was really always into reading on my own. I was always into economics, political science, distributed computing. And then I stumbled upon Bitcoin. Everybody's talking about it. From that said, hey, okay, what's this all about? And then, you start reading. I got more enamored by the blockchain, the technology behind it. And it's a rabbit hole, right? You start reading it and you keep going deeper and deeper.
Absolutely.
And then decided, I want to get into this space. That was around mid-2014. Met my co-founder who had recently left. He was working for the company called ZeroBlock, which was an early blockchain company, and it got bought by Blockchain, the wallet company. So he was in Silicon Valley, Neeraj. He moved back to Vancouver, and just by fate, coincident, we both had a common friend. He introduced us both, saying, "Hey, you guys are both working on this blockchain stuff." That friend didn't understand this. He goes, "Pavel, you're more into design and product. Yeah. Neeraj is he's a technology guy. Maybe you guys looks like you both want to do the same thing." So he connected us, and we hit it off and started the company from there, Bluzelle. So that was around mid to fall of 2014.
Yeah. So you've been active since about 2014, 2015, and worked with a bunch of banks, banking platforms, and insurance companies. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so how we got into that was initially so this was in Vancouver, and we were focusing on doing just anything on the blockchain. So we did some stuff for Ripple, some other small projects. Cryptocurrency started kind of pushing back, but people got really interested into blockchain and what it can do, as you know. And so we decided that, hey, the better target market is going to be, we believe the businesses would use this and would be super interested, and blockchain for enterprises is good. And so that's when we started to focus on banks and selling them blockchain solutions. So that was around 2015. End of 2015, we decided that Vancouver and Canada doesn't really have a target market for insurers and banks. And we said, Asia adopts technologies faster. Let's go to an Asian financial hub. And that's how we'll do it. So that's what made us February 2016, we moved to Singapore to pursue that, saying that, hey, there's a lot of banks here. The government is super supportive of fintech and pushing blockchain. So we said, if it's going to work, it's going to work here. And we went from that.
Yeah, I think the Singapore government has done an amazing job of attracting top talent as well as capital to foster this ecosystem of startups. And so now you guys are building a decentralized database service. Could you explain very simply what that means and how it works?
Yes. So how it actually came about was that we were, I'll take a step back. So as you were saying, we're doing projects in Singapore for banks and insurers like HSBC, AIA, the insurer, OCBC, MSIG, Japanese insurer. So really well-known names, MUFG, another Japanese bank. And while we're building these products, so we would build, let's say, we built a digital identity platform over Ethereum for the banks. Then we did an insurance platform for the insurers over Ethereum. But while we were doing it, we needed to store the data somewhere. So we built a decentralized app, used Ethereum, but then the data that we were storing was had to be done on Microsoft Azure, like a centralized traditional database system. Now, the problem we had was that the apps didn't directly, it wasn't a one-to-one relationship. So, I mean, to make it in really simple terms, we had to blockchainify Azure so it can handle our product that we made. That was a big pain point. So then that's when we decided that, hey, if we're having this pain point, everyone will. And if we believe decentralized apps is the future, shouldn't they be running on a decentralized platform like Ethereum, but also a decentralized database to store all that? And that's how the common product of Bluzelle came to fruition, was really solving our own problem for this project we did for the banks. So now, going back to what you originally said, is what is a decentralized database? So currently a database, as everybody knows, you can use Excel as a database. It stores records and records for any type of information. Current systems that big companies use, or even small companies, are either on-premise, so in-house, like on a server, or they're based on the cloud, like Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon Web Services. The problem is, in these systems, as you've seen over the last 6 months or a year, all these data breaches happen and data leaks. And usually it's because if you have a centralized system, you can really break into there and take the data. Now, what we're doing is saying, let's decentralize it. Let's create our own network where what we do is take instead of doing it on a central number of servers on a cloud, we're taking your laptop or your computer at home. Everybody else says and saying, download the Bluzelle protocol. And instead of being a miner for Bitcoin or Ethereum, you're a storage node on the Bluzelle network. So now customers, when they store their data, it's not stored in one place, it's stored on thousands of places. So that way, for someone to steal the data, they have to take over the entire network. And now for the producer who stored the part of that data on their machine, they earn a Bluzelle token.
So I'm going to get to how to become a node and start earning Bluzelle tokens. But before that, I read about what you guys are working on. And I feel that a lot of times there's a lot of confusion between file storage, which is something which Filecoin and Sia are doing, compared to what you guys are doing, which is more of data storage and management. Could you make that distinction between file storage and management versus having a database for our listeners who may not know the difference between the two?
Yeah, so the easiest way to understand the two is file storage is different than files and data. So people go, hey, what is that? Well, Dropbox stores files. Oracle stores the data behind it for those files, like a database. So that's really the easiest way to understand. So Filecoin, Sia, Storj are more like Dropbox, we're more like Oracle. To make it even more simpler for people to have a one-to-one relationship is, let's just say they're using Instagram or even Facebook photos. So that photo is a file that's stored somewhere. Now the data behind that photo, which could be, Pavel sent it to you, the location, who I tagged yourself in it, date, time, all that data needs to be stored somewhere else. And depending on what Instagram, Facebook would do, that's stored in a database. So that's how you separate the two. So we don't compete with Filecoin or Sia, we're complementary products.
Let's talk about the tech stuff a little bit. So you mentioned Swarm technology on your website and repeatedly in your white paper as well. Could you go into a little bit more detail about what a Swarm is and how it works?
Yeah, so the main thing, easiest way to understand the Swarm, it's done for speed and efficiency. So right now, if you look at Bitcoin or Ethereum, it takes a long time to process any transaction because the entire system has to come to consensus that we agree that this transaction is true. And basically call that the entire universe has to come to agreement. Now, look at swarming as just like in a real world, we have the universe, but we also have galaxies, thousands and billions of galaxies that make up the universe. So think of the swarm like a galaxy. So we're saying, don't worry with the universe agreeing. Let's just have the swarm or the galaxy agree that this is true. So you're making a subset that enough and is redundant and safe, secure, and has all the principles of the blockchain, but can guarantee the consensus without having the entire universe have to do it. So that way you get way more speed out of it.
So the way I was picturing it in my head was sort of like a beehive. So you have multiple beehives. And I don't know if this analogy is correct. So for example, multiple sort of holes or spokes in a beehive would be the nodes. And so multiple nodes would form a swarm. And then you have multiple beehives. And so you have multiple swarms. Is that a good analogy?
That's correct. Because whenever somebody thinks of a swarm, they think of bees.
Yeah.
So that's a great that's another one. That's a great parallel to the Galaxy one.
Okay. So if I'm an application developer and I use Bluzelle for my database needs, and I have a particularly large requirement, could you tell us how high level, how that would work in the backend? So where would the data sit? Is it kept on multiple nodes within one swarm, or does it go to all the swarms?
It would. The goal is it would be on certain data it'd be spread across multiple swarms. So certain parts of data would be on a set would be on one swarm, another set could be on a different swarm, and that's really, once again, it's for security and persistence issues. So the system won't go down, right? So if one node or one swarm goes down, it's okay. It's replicated. The database is still alive.
Right. And is the formation of a swarm random, or is it by location, or like how do you figure out like what nodes are going to form a swarm?
Those are the algorithms that we're building out. Some swarms might have to be localized or regional specific to depend on speed. Some just might be spread out and just still connected. And how it retrieves the data would be like, so let's just say it says Pavel Bains lives in Singapore on one data record. Now, if somebody needs to retrieve that, it could look at, okay, which node on a swarm do we need to go to retrieve it? It might be the one that's, whichever's faster. So the one that actually might have the fastest connection, or the one that may be closest to the customer who's requesting that data, depending on the city they're in.
So you mentioned two stakeholders in your white paper, the producers and the consumers. Could you briefly explain what the role of these two stakeholders are and how the whole system works?
What we built is, yes, it's a database layer, but really at its core, what is it? It's a marketplace, right? We've allowed two parties to come in and exchange goods for fees. So a consumer would be, let's just say, years from now, it could be, electronic arts per se. Let's say they want to store all their game data on somewhere. So they'd be the consumer. The producer could be just myself, you out there, who turned on our computers and allowed Bluzelle to basically store data on the network. So it's very similar to, if you heard of the SETI project, which launched about 18 years ago. And that's what my first intro into distributed computing was. When SETI is just search for extraterrestrial intelligence. They said, hey, if we can power all this unused hardware or computer power around the world, we can actually scan the universe faster and more efficiently. So the producer here is saying, like I said, instead of mining for Bitcoin or Ethereum, they're like, I'm going to earn Bluzelle tokens. The consumer is the actual customer who needs to store data somewhere.
And so the producers have to stake their BNT token, which I'm going to get to as well, in order to run the node. And so it's kind of like a proof of stake consensus mechanism, right?
That's right. So that's to prevent bad players, bad customer service. And if we find like one node is not acting the right way, the system detects that this is a bad actor, we can take that stake away from them.
Okay. And so you're slated to release the beta end of June, if I'm not wrong?
Well, I wouldn't say it's the beta. It will be more like an alpha, but it'll be a working single swarm product. So customers will be able to, all the companies that we're working with right now, they'll be able to download it, use it. Most of the nodes is going to be run through us and our strategic partners at start, just to prove the system out.
Okay.
But it'll be resilient, tried and tested companies on our network, and then the people using it could be like, okay, let me start storing data in a single swarm environment.
Okay. And so at some point in the future, once the system has been battle tested, so to say, I want to become a producer and earn some Bluzelle tokens. What would be the requirements be? How do I go about it? Is it a simple process, or is running a node non-trivial?
We're going to make it as simple as we can, and that's what that's going to require is, like right now we're building out our documentation, the API docs, everything that a producer would need to understand, and it should be as simple as, hey, here's a code. Download it, run it, connect to our smart contract, and you're live.
And so as a producer, can I decide which swarm I want to be a part of? Or does it even matter what swarm am I a part of?
No, it shouldn't, because we want to keep that all anonymous and not have choices. Because I mean, even really, if I turn my computer on, does it really matter which swarm I'm part of?
Yeah,
I'm just part of the network and stuff. As long as things are being stored on my machine and I'm earning, that's the benefit.
yeah. But there are no incentive or disincentive mechanisms that are to do with Swarm as a whole, right? It's individual nodes that get penalized for bad behavior and not the Swarm.
That's right. No, the swarm won't be.
Yeah. Okay.
It's an individual node.
Okay. So let's talk about the two tokens that you have. And I'm sure you get this question a lot, why have two tokens? So BLZ and BNT. BLZ is your ERC20 token and BNT is your internal network token. Could you tell us quickly about the roles of the two tokens?
And once again, everything comes down to how we think about it is about efficiency of the system. So if you look at the ERC20 tokens, why did we do it? Well, it's a funding mechanism, right? Everybody, you've got the wallets already out there. You got a platform like Ethereum that allows you to do it. It's tried and tested. So it's a way to raise the money. Now, the problem is if we use BLZ, the ERC20 token, so let's just say you've got a bunch of data stored on your network. You got a database running. If every time you paid or you want to do an action and it took a microcent or something of your BLZ, the entire network would have to validate that this is true, it's your data, all that stuff before it can accept it. So given current Ethereum's processing speed, it would take time. And whether you're a decentralized system or centralized, what does a developer care? They want reliability and they want speed. So if they're taking long for a transaction to confirm their request just to get their data, that wouldn't work. So the way we solve that problem is, if you're a consumer, you come in, you've got your Bluzelle tokens, let's say $100 worth. I want to use these things. Okay, good. You join the network, we're ready to go. So basically what we would do is we swap your BLZ for the equivalent in Bluzelle native token, the internal one. Now once you're in, now everything that you do for create, read, update, delete, that you're using the network that we did charge for, it's only taking BNT, and because it's on our own internal network, it's instantaneous. The speed's there, so you have no time delay for using the service. Now, after a while, if you're like, you know what, I'm tired, I don't need this, I actually want to, or if you've earned a lot of BNT and you want to trade it out for some other token, then it converts back to BLZ and you can go and sell it or whatever you want to do on any other exchange.
And you mentioned in your white paper, and this kind of popped for me, that there's a small fee attached to whenever someone wants to convert from BLZ to BNT and vice versa. So, and that's how you generate a bit of revenue as well. So was this revenue model one of your considerations as well, which prompted you to create these two tokens? And so this is apart from, the funding mechanism, because it's easy to fund and BNT gives you the speed and it solves the latency issues. But was this revenue model one of the considerations as well, which prompted you to create these two tokens?
No, because ideally we just like it to be one token. The revenue model, even if it was one token, every time a request would be made on the network to use stored data or create and read, we would still have the microtransaction regardless. So when it pays out from consumer to producer, we have a network fee attached. So that's there regardless of if there's one token or two.
Right. So let's talk about competition for a little bit, both in the world that we live in today, as well as in the decentralized world that we will live in the future, hopefully. So you mentioned Oracle earlier, but you'd be competing with some of the other giants as well, right? So Amazon, Google, Microsoft.
Well, at some point we would.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would be like right now, our early target market to stay focused is blockchain projects, blockchain applications.
Yeah.
But it could be once we step out of the early adopter to if you follow the market adoption curve to early majority, that would be any web or mobile application out there, even if it's non-blockchain. They're using databases anyways. So at that point, we would be going up against Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, Oracle.
Right. So apart from being decentralized, the value proposition that you offer, would your customers be getting better pricing and better performance than they do today by using, the database services that are provided by Microsoft, Amazon, and so on?
Well, let's just decentralization isn't actually a benefit. There's not a value proposition. If you go to somebody and say, "Hey, you should use it because it's decentralized," no, that to the average person, they don't even understand what that means.
Yeah.
So the real value proposition what does decentralization in a database offer? We're offering way better security, which is a number one issue with all these data leaks.
Yeah.
You also have way more reliability. So that means, there won't be, if the system goes down, some of your servers, like in traditional cloud-based systems, in a decentralized one, if a node or a bunch of nodes go down, it doesn't affect it. It's still reliable. You can still get what you need. And then a third one is scalability. Because you can bring the costs down and almost charge just-in-time pricing and bring a lot of that overhead away, you can offer lower cost, and you can allow people, startups especially when they just don't have much revenue, but the users start scaling well, they can scale pretty well, but still at a managed cost. So you get three benefits there.
So you are saying that customers do end up getting better pricing as well as performance once you're fully up and running?
That's correct.
And so in terms of competition within the blockchain space, do you have any competitors?
The main one that always comes up is Big Chain DB. They've been around a couple of years. They've been focusing, from what I know, more on enterprises and have been doing very well at that. So how they design their own database system is more geared towards the enterprise on-premise market, where enterprises don't want anything stored on the net or cloud. They want it in-house. So that's from what we know. So we're focused on, nothing stored in-house. You don't manage any hardware. You just plug into the network and use it. That's what we bring at a protocol level. We believe that in the database space or any of the stuff, there's multiple ways to skin a cat, different approaches. And, they've got their approach. We have ours. And it targets different markets. So if you look at existing traditional systems, whether it's Dropbox, which is file storage, there's, probably 100 top file storage companies around the world, and they all do well. Even when you're talking about databases, you brought up good ones right there. Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, IBM, they all have database as a service database cloud solutions that they sell off, and they all do well.
Absolutely. That makes sense. So you finished your ICO recently. What was that journey like?
It was, I was just talking about it earlier today. It's probably the month leading up to it was pretty intense. It's a great experience. I mean, I think if you're a top tech company, everyone should do a public sale because of the community you generate. You get awareness of your product, and you get a good gauge of what people are thinking about your brand, your project, your team. So that's unbelievable, really worth it. The stresses that come with it are, you got to protect yourself from all these hacking attempts, scams that are out there that are leveraging your name, technology problems that might come up when you're doing the onboarding or registration. You're dealing with a lot of customers coming in, want to be excited and being part of it, which is great. But then the managing of it gets a bit difficult. But for me, I loved, even with all those hacking attempts and security measures that we took to place and, sleepless nights, like I went 60 hours once without sleeping. I was up 60 hours straight. Yeah, I was up 60 hours straight because a problem happened and I was like, I'm not sleeping till this thing is solved. And there's no way I could even go to sleep or close my eyes because I was like, knew what was going on. But regardless of all that, it was like the community support, talking to them, engaging them, doing it. It's fantastic. And you have this one goal that you're working towards. Let's get to this date. Let's do this well. And if we do well, everybody will be happy. Yeah. So for me, it's that whole journey from building up the community from scratch, educating people about the product, getting them excited about the tech, the team, was unbelievable. Spending all that time to do it well was one of the best experiences I probably had. One of the most probably stressful, but still the best. Like, I loved it.
And you obviously did very well. So congratulations. But the journey's just begun for you, right?
Yeah, that just got to the basically, what did that do? That got us to the starting line. But the best thing about it is to engage in a community and have people support it and be excited about ideas we have in our head, stuff that we worked on for years, and be able to get that strong support right away. I travel all over the world, especially Asia, and to go to Vietnam and somebody come up and say, "Hey, you're Pavel, founder of Bluzelle. I've been following the project. I was in the ICO. I love it. Can I get a picture from you and my friends?" Like, when is that? That's like saying, it's like when has that ever happened?
Rock star status, right?
I won't say that. It's almost like, I was saying this to somebody else the other day. Imagine being Mark Zuckerberg and these guys sitting in a garage building Facebook. People kind of know about it, but the product's not out there. But people are really excited and into the community and what Mark and those guys are doing. and you go and they're already recognizing the work you're putting in. That's never happened before, right? Now it does. So having that, I think that's the best part of this whole thing, is having that constant community engagement and working with them and getting the good feedback, and then them all being excited. And every time you deliver, they get more excited, which is good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you obviously ran a very successful ICO, but would you do anything differently today? Or do you think it was all good?
Let me think. It's always, the hard part is things change so often. And you try to, I think the one thing I would do is, so we did our raise where we did about 60% private sale, 40% public sale for the ICO. I think I would, if I could do it again, I'd probably go the other way, where 60% to the public and 40 to the private, or even less, 30 to the private, 70 to the public. But at that time, people were, in November, everybody was shying away because, Ether prices were going down, Bitcoin, it was really cold. So people were worried that, will the public support these things? Have they gone tired? And so you just never know.
Yeah. So
I think hindsight being 2020, if I could go back, I would probably be like, I want to give more to the public and invite more people in to participate. That'd be a definite thing.
So for our listeners who've been actively following this podcast, you may remember that we interviewed Bancorus in episode number 3, which was accepted into JD.com's inaugural accelerator out of Beijing. So Bluzelle is also one of the other companies that has been accepted into this accelerator. So more good news for you, Pavel.
Yeah, it's an exciting thing that we're working on with them. It's going to give us some good opportunities to test out our product, build some use case with them, with a big company. Even though, like I said, we're targeting small ones and work with them. It's when a big one comes along and says, hey, we want to work on this and understand what you're building here and build some use cases to show the world, you're not going to say no to that.
Yeah, for sure. And so has the program already begun?
It's begun in a private way of just defining the scope of projects and what we want to get done. Yes.
If you could talk about your journey so far, do you think, obviously, JD.com is a great partner to have. What's that experience been like, or like, what are your thoughts on this accelerator in general?
We're actually not allowed to talk about it right now. They want to keep everything kind of internal and work on privately until there's real things that they can go out there and showcase. So they don't want to be in, we don't want to be in a thing where dropping news with nothing to show. They want to be like, okay, when we come out, we're going to be able to showcase something.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. So you mentioned earlier on in our conversation that the alpha goes live in June this year. So what does your roadmap look like beyond that? Are there any specific activities that you want to focus on this year or early 2019?
Aside from product development, like, the main thing is go from single swarm to multi-swarm. That'll be the next big one. Aside from product, you're always going to be working on, and we've got what we want to build out, every month. I think the big one we want to do is, aside from that, is really build up we have a good solid token community, crypto community that likes us, and engaging them is really to empower them with more tools so they can sit there and spread the word about the product, the project. But aside from that is really build up that developer community. So two sides of it. People are interested in being producers and consumers. So how do we acquire them? How do we build like how Google I/O has, Apple has their worldwide developers, their own developer community. How do we build that up, attract them so they're engaged, they're working on things and having fun and excited about the project? And then also build up our open source community. So those ones because it's in our map, in our white paper and everything, that we want to give a set number of Bluzelle tokens as rewards for people, the community, to solve certain technical challenges or problems that we might come. We might need a mini product built that runs on our database. We want to give that to the community. So I would say building up the software developer community is a big thing that we're focused on for right now for the rest of the year.
Before we wrap up, I want to get your outlook on the blockchain space in general. We're obviously in relatively early stages. Where do you see it heading over the next 12 to 24 months? Are there any projects besides your project that you're particularly excited about?
I'm a purist on the tech side. So I think a lot of the stuff right now is the cool infrastructure projects are needed to allow all of these awesome dApps that people are developing so they can be maximized. So I think over the next year and a half, you're going to see more of those infrastructure ones come to market. So companies like Zilliqa, doing a lightning fast blockchain, that's one I'm really excited about. We work with them really closely of being tech partners. So, some of their Zilliqa's things are going to run on Bluzelle as a database. We might use some of their stuff to solve some of our challenges. So that one's really exciting. Mainframe, which is, a new communications platform and all about, privacy protection, data protection, decentralization. That one's got me excited as well. So those are two of them. So I think anything that's really over the next year, I think you're going to see a lot of, even if it's in testnet form or alpha form, you're going to see a lot of these decentralization ideas or concepts, and people are going to be able to actually see them in action. Even though they might be small right now, but at least they'll be able to see and tangibly understand what the impact and power of all these systems are.
Right. And so are there any other projects that you're looking to work with or that you've already kind of partnered with and have started working with them?
Yeah, so we've got, like I said, Zilliqa.
Yeah.
We announced a whole bunch in the past week. Like one is Sentinel, which is cybersecurity intelligence on the blockchain.
Yeah.
That one's really interesting. 0x, they're a decentralized exchange. I like them because the founders are really good, really tech savvy, really into the tech purists. I met them last June in Singapore when they were coming through the city, and we just built a relationship from there. So I like what they are doing. Other ones are like the ones we announced recently. Like I said, there's Octus Labs. There is Physical, which is location data. And so they're able to gather all this data, and they would use us as the database layer behind it to store it while applications are built on using their data. So that's a really good one. The founders of those project, Physical, Ben and Justin, really good hustlers. They're from San Francisco, but they travel throughout Asia all the time, come off and doing meetups, showcasing the product and just building up their own community. So Illuma.io, so the company's Illuma, they're coming out, they're a decentralized exchange, primarily targeting India and the Southeast Asian emerging markets.
Okay.
Their system is going to make it really easy for people in these countries to basically onboard, do proper KYC in a simple way, have resilient security. And their whole goal is just provide a system that appeases these guys come from traditional backgrounds. They know how to do KYC, proper onboarding compliance. So making a system that's flexible and easy to use, which makes regulators, bankers, and everybody else happy, but at the same time doesn't take away from the ease of use of the customer experience for new people getting into crypto.
Any last comments from your end?
No, I think the best thing, people, if anybody's listening, is would love them to come to our website. If they're a blockchain platform, there's a form they can fill out, so we can start working with them in a certain way. If they want to be a producer or they're a DApp developer, they can define themselves, and then we start engaging in that communication with them for them to understand more of the product. If somebody's just interested in the company, just sign up to our newsletter. What we want to do is everybody to get educated on the product or the vision of decentralization, why it's important, and then they are empowered to go and spread the word. Because what it should be is that everybody should be talking to their parent, family, and friends. It's not just about Bluzelle, but why decentralization is important, why cryptocurrencies are helping that, and why everybody, their friends and family, will benefit from that overall. So that's really important. I'd love to have that. Second thing I want to do is just thank yourself, companies, projects, people like you are doing a lot for the ecosystem, because this is all brand new. And the more people we have just building these new outlets to communicate and talk helps everybody out, because we're not designed to be always in the mainstream, and they're not always going to pay attention. It's going to be this new ecosystem, not just on the tech side, product side, crypto side, but also on the media side that guys like yourself are building out. Helping host events, spreading awareness. That's really helpful for all of us. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On that note, let's end the interview. Thank you, Pavel, for taking the time out to come speak with us. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Like us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Telegram, and subscribe to our newsletter on decrypt.asia. This is your host, Tushar. Thank you for listening.